the Antikythera mechanism. The ship is going down. 87 years before the Common Era, somewhere between Crete and the Peloponnese, a merchant vessel is sinking in a storm. In its hold, packed inside a wooden box no larger than a shoebox, is a device that will not be understood for 2,000 years. When Greek sponge divers stumble across the wreck in 1900, they pull up bronze statues, amphorae, jewelry. Then they pull up something that does not belong in any century. Historian Derek de Solla Price notices gear teeth on one corroded fragment in 1951 and refuses to let it go. CT scanning by the Antikythera mechanism. Research project in 2005 reveals at least 30 interlocking bronze gears inside the mass, with teeth cut to a precision of 1/10 of a millimeter. It tracked the sun, the moon, 5 planets, and predicted solar and lunar eclipses using the Saros cycle. A differential gear system Europe would not independently engineer until 1575. The gap between this device and the next comparable machine is 1,400 years. Scholars call it a luxury scientific instrument built for a wealthy patron, lost when the ship sank. But the mechanism was found sealed inside a wooden case. An eclipse prediction is not a luxury, it is a weapon. Ancient commanders timed battles around eclipse terror. Plutarch records that the Athenian general Nicias refused to move his fleet in 413 before the Common Era because of a lunar eclipse. A device that predicts eclipses on command gives its owner the power to manufacture divine omens on schedule. Someone knew exactly what they were carrying, and someone made sure it went to the bottom of the sea. Greek fire and the sealed siphon. The Arab fleet is advancing on Constantinople, 600 ships. Then the Byzantine navy opens bronze tubes mounted on the prows of their dromons, and the sea catches fire. Sailors jump overboard. The fire follows them. This is 672 of the Common Era, and the weapon is so terrifying that the emperor who deploys it classifies it immediately, sealing the formula inside the imperial vault and restricting its operation to a single hereditary family. 8. The chronicler, Theophanes the Confessor, documents the weapon's debut at the first Arab siege of Constantinople. Emperor Constantine VII's De Administrando Imperio explicitly forbids sharing the formula with any allied nation on pain of death, describing it as a divine gift. Byzantine Princess Anna Komnene confirms it was still in active use in 1148, nearly 5 centuries after its invention. Modern chemist John Halden of Princeton University has proposed the most plausible reconstruction: quicklime, petroleum naphtha, pine resin. But this mixture does not fully replicate the weapon's behavior on water. When Constantinople finally fell in 1453, Ottoman Sultan Mehmed II reportedly spent weeks searching the imperial archives specifically for the formula. He found nothing. No civilization that encountered Greek fire over 800 years of documented use ever reverse-engineered it. Not the Arab fleets defeated by it repeatedly, not the Crusaders, not the Venetians with traders inside the city for centuries. Every reconstruction produces something that partially works. Nothing produces the original. Which raises a question historians have been reluctant to fully ask. Was the siphon itself only half the weapon? The Ulfbert Sword Forge. You are a Viking blacksmith and you have just examined a sword you cannot make. It bends without cracking. It is lighter than any blade your forge produces and harder than your best iron. Stamped near the guard, VLFBERHT. Metallurgist Alan Williams of the Wallace Collection in London ran spectrographic analysis on 44 specimens and published his findings in 2012. True Ulfbeert blades contain carbon at 0.6% by weight. That is the definition of crucible steel. To produce crucible steel, you must heat iron ore above 1600 degrees Celsius. European blast furnace technology did not achieve that temperature until the Industrial Revolution of the 1800s. The carbon content eliminates the slag inclusions that made medieval iron swords brittle, producing a blade 800 years ahead of European metallurgical capability. Then, around 1000 of the Common Era, production stops completely. Williams confirmed that the steel composition matches crucible steel from Central Asia, suggesting raw material traveled via Volga trade routes to Viking territory. A PBS Nova documentary in 2012 had master blacksmith Richard Furrer attempt a replication using period tools. He required a custom-built furnace running for over 8 hours and still produced inferior carbon distribution. Production of authentic Ulfbeerts ceases precisely when the Volga trade route is disrupted, but importing raw steel ingots still requires a forge capable of remelting crucible steel without degrading it. Someone understood the metallurgy, not just the material, and then they stopped. Whether that knowledge starved or was silenced, we may never know. The Phaistos Disc. On the 3rd of July, 1908, Italian archaeologist Luigi Pernier reaches into the ash of a burnt basement room in a 3,700-year-old Minoan palace on the island of Crete and pulls out a disc of fired clay. Both sides are covered in a spiral of stamped symbols, 241 of them, pressed using 45 distinct handheld stamps in a sequence spiraling from edge to center. It is the world's first known printed document. No one has ever read it. The disc measures 15.8 centimeters in diameter and was deliberately hardened by fire for permanent preservation. Thermoluminescence dating by the University of Copenhagen in 2008 confirmed it dates to approximately 1700 to 1600 before the Common Era. Linguist Yves Duhoux of the Université Catholique de Louvain confirmed in 2000 that the symbol set bears no relationship to any other known Bronze Age writing system. The room where it was found showed signs of a rapid destruction event, suggesting it was sealed deliberately. The warrior motifs, helmeted figures, and figure 8 war shields appear 19 times, the highest frequency of any symbol class. Mainstream archaeologists classify it as a religious hymn or administrative inventory, noting that warrior symbols could be ideographic references to power rather than literal military content. But the decision to fire the clay, to make it permanent, not disposable, is not the behavior of a routine administrative record. This disc was made to last. It was hidden during a violent event, and the complete absence of any other object sharing its 45 symbols across more than a century of Mediterranean excavation suggests either extraordinary historical accident or the deliberate isolation of something someone did not want found: Damascus steel and the lost furnace. A Crusader knight picks up a Damascus blade from a battlefield. He runs his thumb along the edge carefully, then watches a silk scarf dropped across it split under its own weight. He takes the sword back to Europe. European smiths spend the next 5 centuries trying to understand how it was made. They never succeed. In 1750, the last man who knows goes silent. In 2006, physicist Peter Pofler at Dresden University of Technology ran electron microscopy on a historical Damascus blade and found carbon nanotubes, cylindrical structures of carbon 1 nanometer in diameter, first synthesized in a laboratory in 1991. His findings were published in Nature, volume 444. Wootz ingots used for Damascus steel originated in southern India, at mines in Hyderabad and Karnataka, containing trace elements, vanadium, chromium, manganese, not found in Middle Eastern ore which researchers believe were essential to nanotube formation. Metallurgist Oleg Sherby of Stanford University demonstrated in the 1980s that replicating WOOTs requires cycling steel through a precise temperature range repeatedly. A thermal protocol the medieval smiths encoded as ritual, not formula. When the Indian ore supply was disrupted in the 18th century by colonial trade economics, Damascus smiths substituting materials reported inferior results without being able to explain why. Approximately 300 authenticated Damascus blades survive in world collections. Every attempt to reproduce equivalent nanotube density has failed. Mainstream historians attribute the loss to economic disruption and the death of oral traditions. But the nanotubes were not accidental. The Smiths were encoding sub-nanometer materials, science without microscopes, without chemistry, without any framework for what an atom is. Whoever developed this process understood something about matter that we are only beginning to catch up to. The Archimedes heat ray Roman warships are closing on the harbor of Syracuse. They are near enough that legionaries on deck can see the city walls. Then something catches the light, hundreds of polished surfaces tilting, adjusting. The flagship begins to smoke, then it ignites. General Marcus Claudius Marcellus orders the fleet back. He will later call the weapon a geometrical Briareus, a monster made of mathematics. The siege is 214 before the Common Era. The weapon is attributed to Archimedes of Syracuse, and later sources including the Byzantine writer John Tzetzes document its use. In 1973, Greek scientist Ioannis Sakkas tested the concept using 70 Greek sailors, each holding a flat bronze-coated mirror of 1.5 square meters. At 50 meters distance, a mock Roman ship caught fire in under 3 minutes. In 2005, an MIT student team using 127 one-foot square mirrors generated sufficient focused energy at 100 feet to ignite wood. Archimedes' own surviving texts on the equilibrium of planes, the method, demonstrate his mastery of parabolic geometry, the precise mathematical principle required to focus parallel light rays to a single point. When Syracuse fell, Marcellus reportedly ordered Archimedes taken alive. A soldier killed him before the order arrived. His workshop was stripped. His notes were removed. And no Roman military text, from a civilization that absorbed Greek science comprehensively, ever describes even attempting to build a mirror weapon. Rome had every incentive to replicate it. Some historians of ancient science have quietly asked whether the erasure of Archimedes' papers was not collateral damage from a battle, but the most deliberate act of technological suppression in the ancient world. The Baghdad Battery. In 1936, a German archaeologist named Wilhelm Koenig is cataloging storage jars in the basement of the Iraq Museum when he notices something odd about a particular terracotta vessel. It contains a copper cylinder. The cylinder has an iron rod running through its center, sealed at the top with an asphalt stopper. Koenig has seen this configuration before in a laboratory. He publishes his theory in 1938, proposing the jar is an ancient electrochemical battery. In 1940, scientist Willard Gray at General Electric builds a working replica and fills it with grape juice. It produces between 0.5 volt and 2 volts of electricity. Egyptologist Arne Ekebrecht at the Romer Pelizaeus Museum replicated the battery in 1978 and used a series of connected jars to electroplate a silver statuette, producing a coating indistinguishable from historically documented ancient goldsmithing in the same region. 12 similar assemblies were found at the same Parthian-era site near Baghdad. The asphalt seal creates an airtight chamber, functionally necessary for a battery but unnecessary for any known storage purpose of the period. Most archaeologists argue the jars stored sacred scrolls and that the copper cylinder protected documents from moisture. The battery appearance is coincidental, they say, and without a complete circuit, a single jar produces no useful output. But a scroll storage function does not require a precision-fitted copper cylinder sealed with asphalt. Gray confirmed this shape generates electricity. The question Willard Gray could never answer, and neither can we, is how anyone in 250 years before the Common Era figured out that this specific combination of materials in this specific geometry did anything useful at all. The Nimrud lens. In 1850, British archaeologist Austen Henry Layard is excavating the ruins of the Assyrian palace at Nimrud in northern Iraq when he uncovers a small oval piece of rock crystal. It is scratched, it is asymmetrical. It is also, when held at the correct angle in sunlight, a working magnifying lens with a focal length of 11 centimeters. Layard bags it and ships it to the British Museum, where it sits largely unexamined for 150 years. Researcher Robert Temple subjects it to formal optical analysis in 1999, publishing his findings in the Crystal Sun in 2000. A qualified optician confirmed the lens could function as a magnifying glass, a fire-starting lens, or as the eyepiece of a rudimentary telescope. It was manufactured in Assyria in approximately 750 before the Common Era, over 2,500 years before the first documented optical glass lens in Europe, and roughly 2,350 years before Galileo's telescope. Assyrian gem seal engravings from the same period contain details as fine as 0.5 millimeter. Consistent with work produced under optical magnification, natural rock crystal cannot be shaped by cutting alone. It requires grinding with progressively finer abrasives, implying systematic manufacturing. Temple identified at least 450 similar objects in museum collections worldwide that had been cataloged as decorative items without optical examination. Most archaeologists classify the lens as ornamental or ritual, attributing the fine engraving detail to exceptional naked-eye skill developed over lifetimes of practice. But if one polished crystal being optically functional is coincidence, what is 450? And if craftsmen spending careers making objects too small to see clearly discovered the magnifying property by accident, the idea that they then set it aside requires a very specific kind of motivated blindness. The Carthaginian naval rams of Egadi. On the 10th of March, 241 before the Common Era, the largest naval battle in the ancient world ends in minutes. The Carthaginian fleet is destroyed off the Egadi Islands near western Sicily. Warships sink within sight of the coast. And on the seafloor, preserved in cold water and silt, the bronze rams that punched through their hulls wait 2,000 years to be recovered, still carrying the signatures of the engineers who cast them. The RPM Nautical Foundation began systematic surveys of the battlefield in 2010 under archaeologist William Murray of the University of South Florida. By 2017, 11 bronze rams had been recovered. Murray's team published metallurgical findings in the International Journal of Nautical Archaeology, confirming that bronze alloy compositions were consistent across all 11 Carthaginian rams, indicating a single foundry source. Each ram weighs between 70 and 120 kilograms, cast using a lost wax process into a hollow interior structure with iron reinforcement ribs that distribute stress loads with mathematical precision. Inscriptions on several rams include numerals and what appear to be inspector's marks, the equivalent of manufacturing batch numbers. These were standardized, mass-produced weapons built to a state engineering specification. Roman rams from the same battlefield show variable construction, consistent with decentralized production. After Rome destroyed Carthage in 146 before the Common Era, all Carthaginian military and technical records were burned. Rome preserved Carthaginian agricultural texts. Mago's 28-book farming manual was officially translated into Latin by Senate order. Naval engineering specifications were not preserved. For a maritime empire about to contest the Eastern Mediterranean, that omission was not an oversight. Someone in Rome decided which knowledge was worth keeping and which was too dangerous to survive. The Chinese fire lance and the Wujing Zongyao. The year is 1044 of the Common Era. The Song Emperor is at war on 3 fronts. His military engineers have just written down, for the first time, the formula for a weapon that will eventually kill more human beings than any other in history. Then they lock the book and mark it for official use only, not for circulation. The Wujing Zongyao, Complete Essentials from the Military Classics, compiled between 1040 and 1044 under Imperial Commission, is the oldest known text containing written gunpowder formulas. 3 variants for incendiary bombs, fire arrows, and fire poison smoke. The fire lance itself, a bamboo tube packed with gunpowder, held like a spear and projecting flame, is documented in use as early as 904 of the Common Era, 140 years before the manual was even written. Joseph Needham's Science and Civilization in China, Volume 5, published by Cambridge University Press in 1986, documents the full developmental sequence from incendiary compounds to the fire lance to the metal barrel gun, all within China, predating every comparable European development by 4 centuries. The original Song Dynasty printing plates were destroyed. Fewer than 20 copies of the original text are believed to have been produced. Europe did not produce a comparable gunpowder weapon until around 1313 of the Common Era, a gap of over 400 years. Mainstream historians attribute this to slow transmission through Mongol military contact and Arab intermediaries. But Roger Bacon described a gunpowder formula in 1267 that was deliberately incomplete. He encoded it in an anagram, suggesting he had partial knowledge he was actively obscuring. Someone had the full formula. Someone decided not to share it. The most consequential military technology in human history was classified on the day it was written down, and the library that held the master copy burned. 10 objects, 10 different centuries, 10 different civilizations separated by oceans, languages, and thousands of years, and the same pattern running through every one of them. A technology appears. It works with a precision that should not be possible for its time, and then it disappears, either locked in a vault, sealed in a shipwreck, burned in a library, or buried with the last person who understood it. The mainstream explanations for each of these are reasonable. Trade routes collapse, craftsmen die, formulas are lost, institutions fall, and every one of those explanations is also, in some sense, incomplete. What connects these 10 is not a conspiracy. It is a question. How many times has humanity reached a level of technical capability, lost it entirely, and had no one left to explain how it was done? Most people walk through museums, look at these objects, and see curiosities. You watch this far. That means you see the gaps, the silences where the explanation runs out and the evidence keeps going. That is not a small thing. Hit subscribe. This is where the case stays open. Go to the comments and tell us which of these 10 you think is the hardest to explain away. Make the argument. Let's see who can build the strongest case. Every machine on this list was sealed away not because it failed, but because it worked. The most dangerous thing an ancient weapon can do is not destroy an army. It is proof that someone, long before us, already knew how.